Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, Objectively Dan, and joining me this week, after many weeks of hoping to have her on, we're planning to have her on about a month ago, and then, if you guys remember, I had the flu, and so we had to reschedule, but we're finally happening. Whoa, guys, I need to refresh myself. It's finally happening now. This is Mimzy from Mimzy Vids, joining me today as my guest host. Mimzy, how's it going?
Good. I've been so excited and pumped for this. So this is really cool. Yeah, I've never been on a call-in show, so this is exciting.
Yes. And just to remind everybody watching live, if you've never seen this show before, this is Truth Wanted. This is a show where we talk about what people believe and why. This is a call-in show where we take in people's calls live. So if you're watching the stream live right now, the number should be on screen for you to call, and we'll take in calls here in a second. But you should go ahead and get your call in now so you're into the queue. But we're going to talk the first couple of minutes here with Mimzy and kind of introduce herself and what she's been doing in the community. I mean, Mimzy has really great videos if you haven't checked them out. She is an ex-Muslim who talks mostly about kind of ex-Muslim issues and Islam and other kinds of things around that area. She specializes in videos. I mean, you do comedy, you do commentary. I mean, your videos just run the whole gambit, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I've dabbled in a bit of comedy just because obviously my husband, who you had on your show a month ago, was it? His main thing was comedy, so I've done a bit of that, but mainly it's kind of just talking about my journey, my personal experience through believing in a religion and all the different aspects of that, and then coming out of that, because it's quite a traumatic experience, what it was for me. So I do try and just kind of personalize it, because it's this kind of alien thing to people. Even Muslims don't think that they can not believe in Islam. It's just it's just part of your culture and your life. You don't think, I can be an atheist. It's so unusual. So I talk about that, and that's basically my channel. But I do also do normal vlogs and life stuff as well. It's not all just about religion, and I talk about bits of politics and my views on loads of things, because the other thing I want to do is, I felt a lot of the kind of ex-Muslims out there, or the ones that I was watching, I felt there was kind of a side missing, where it's just you just got to know the person, and I wanted to humanize it a bit as well, just kind of this is me and this is what I do on a normal day.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think that's interesting, being a show at the Atheist Community of Austin, is we see a lot of people who are atheists, obviously, but a lot of those people come from predominantly Christian backgrounds, and have most of their experiences with that kind of religion, or some denomination thereof. And some people don't have as much contact with the Muslim world, or especially the ex-Muslim world. And I'm just glad that you have a channel where you can kind of express what it's like to be in that world, and give other people a sense of this is what you can do now that this is where you're at in life, and you have these change in beliefs. Because I imagine that, the support system that you guys have are probably not as robust as it might be for someone as myself, who's an ex-Christian.
Definitely. It's as I said, it's kind of unusual. It's a newer thing. Islam is a newer religion anyway, in comparison to Judaism and Christianity. So it's kind of it's so embedded in your life. It's not just a belief system, it's a way of life, it's a political system, it's everything. So and it's very cultural. You go to these Muslim countries, and it's the culture is the religion. There's no difference. They can't differentiate between the two anymore. So that becomes difficult. And so when you do leave it, I think that's why I say it's so traumatic, because it's kind of you lose everything. Suddenly your political way of looking at the world changes as well. So it's not just it's how you believe your government should be structured, or how everything. It's literally everything. So it's kind of you're suddenly lost, and you're suddenly confused about how you feel about homosexuality, or how you feel about
yes.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So
yeah, I can relate to that part, at least, definitely. Yeah. And we were talking, I think Vidu and I were talking about this when he was on the show too. Your political beliefs really change as well, which is interesting. And I never realized how much my religion kind of influenced that. But I'd love if you could just, I mean, give a brief synopsis of like kind of how you got to how you are now, you know, like growing up as a Muslim to an ex-Muslim, what that was like, and, you know, just give us your story.
Yeah. So I went to like a Muslim school my whole life. So from the age of like 5, I wore like the headscarf, like the hijab. And, you know, it's a Muslim school is basically, you know, you learn about like Arabic and Islamic studies and Quran, as well as your English, math, science, and everything else. So you kind of, I grew up in this bubble of like, we didn't really meet non-Muslims because we were only around. So we went to school and then our community, and like literally there was no non-Muslims, and we were living in England, by the way. I brought up in London. So it was, so it was only when I kind of left like high school that I was like, oh, this is the real world. And like, this is how other people are. And so growing up in my bubble, I kind of felt, I was very religious. Because that's all I knew, I guess. And it was when I kind of left, and like, especially when I went to university, I think that's when I actually I was part of this scene. They call it the Dawah scene, which is basically like where you spread Islam. So you kind of like speak to people about Islam, and like I actually would make like leaflets.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was like really into it. Like I would try, because at the end of the day, when you believe something like that, it's basically you guys are going to heaven and everyone else is going to hell. And that actually was something that really upset me, and eventually was one of the main reasons why I just couldn't accept it anymore and wanted to leave. But that was something that upset me while I was a Muslim, because I was like, I want everyone to go to heaven. Like, that's really sad. I don't want them to go to hell. So I would really try, and like, I would like, and now I cringe remembering like what I would say, and like, but it's because I genuinely cared about people, and like, I would always like slide it in conversations where like, oh, well, you know, in our religion, like, like, so I would always like be like, well, we can help you with that. So I would always kind of like slide it into conversations. So I was pretty like that. I was quite pushy about it. So and then going through that, actually, funnily enough, was like the beginning to me leaving and becoming an atheist, because I started having discussions and like really kind of was faced with difficult questions by people. And like looking at it from their perspective, I was like, oh, I never thought about it like that. That's interesting. And then I would be like, right, I'm going to go away and research the hell out of this, and then get back to these people and be like, remember what you told me? This is why, and this is why, and that's why you should become a Muslim. So that was kind of how I started doing it. So I would research. I mean, one of the things is like, you know, I mean, about kind of the Prophet marrying like a 6 or 9-year-old, you know, things that non-Muslims kind of would come back to me with and be like, well, why did that happen? Why do women wear hijab? Why is there inequality between men and women when it comes to, you know, their statements? So if you're in court, in Sharia Islamic court, for example, you know, if there's a testimony, a woman's testimony is half that of a man's. So those kinds of questions that, quite frankly, like I just didn't really have an answer to, and I really tried to have an answer to. Eventually, they kind of started to pile up, and I was like, oh, okay, I just don't have an answer to this. But it was over like years of me like really trying to adjust it, and I actually became a very like, eventually towards the end, I actually became a very spiritual like Muslim. So I was kind of like, I'm still Muslim, but I don't take things literally anymore, and I just kind of take the idea of things, and that lasted for a bit, and then eventually I was like, yeah, I can't. I'm an atheist.
Wow. You know, that's so weird, because like you've almost beat by beat described my story in very similar ways, but like, you know, it's coming from a Muslim perspective and not a Christian perspective. And it's so interesting to see kind of those cross-cultural ties, and especially you see it with other people who tell these stories as well. It's like oh, yes, I was hardcore into it, and then I kind of gradually let go and was more spiritual in time. You know, like I feel like that's a common thread that happens with a lot of people's stories. So it's interesting to see that yours kind of follows that a bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's an assumption, I feel like, I don't know how it is so much in the Christian community, but definitely with the Muslim community, that there's an assumption that it's like laziness, or it's like, oh, you just want to drink alcohol, like, oh, you just want to party, or you just want a boyfriend. Like, that's why you left. There is a big assumption of like, it's just, I can't be bothered. Like, people don't realize, like, it's like I was searching and like trying to find answers to strengthen my religion. Like, it was never like, that's the other thing they say, is like, you were looking for the doubt. Like, if you have doubt, then Satan kind of adds it in and then
Yeah.
you leave.
Oh yeah.
But they always say that. So, but it's just not the case. Like, I was looking for answers because I wanted the confirmation, like, so badly. Like, I cried my eyes out. Like, I was devastated. I've had family like cut me off. Like, it's been like the most devastating experience in my entire life, like not believing in it. But at the same time, it's eventually, anyway, it became like liberating, obviously. But yeah, it's not a fun thing to go through.
Yeah. So how did you decide that you wanted to kind of share your story on YouTube and kind of talk about this more? Because I think, especially someone in your position, an ex-Muslim woman talking about her experiences, there is some backlash that probably comes with that. I'm sure that you received that a lot in some of your YouTube comments.
100%. I mean, I get, so as I said before, me and my husband are both on YouTube at the moment, and we get completely different reactions, and it's just like, so obviously you can see, like, there is this kind of view of women. I think it's because like there's this idea of like protecting women in Islam, which obviously is like a nice thing in a way, but at the same time it's kind of like they just, I mean, that's how people like to say it, but it's like a woman speaking out is so much more painful for them to see, because it's like, you should be kind of having the kids of like the next generation of Muslims, like, it aggravates them so much more. And obviously that there is this kind of perspective of women being just what's the word, just more subservient and kind of, just going with the flow. There is that attitude of that the husband is kind of, I mean, just even the perspective of, for example, Islamically, a man can marry a Christian woman or a Jewish woman, because ultimately he's the head of the household and he's in control. But a woman wouldn't be able to do that because she has to follow the husband. So there is very much kind of attitude towards women that we are just supposed to kind of follow suit. So when it's like a woman that suddenly changed her mind or speaks out, it's like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah.
So there definitely is that. And I mean, I actually get a lot of hate. I get like death threats. Who
do you think gets more hate? Do you think you or Vidu gets more hate?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Me, 100%.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's what I figured. Yeah.
100%. Like, it's not even like close. Like, my hate is extreme hate. Like, I get messages constantly about how like, oh, we hope you get gang raped. Like, we hope
Oh my gosh.
Like, it's extreme. Like, it's really extreme. It's not even like a little bit. It's like crazy. I get death threat emails. Like, when I go out, because actually I live in like a Muslim community, and I have to be careful. Like, now if I go out, I actually kind of like try to step away from people if I feel like they come too close. I get really scared. Like, I'm genuinely scared, because I've got so many death threats. So it's definitely a dangerous situation, like when it comes to women, and it's not quite the same with men. So yeah, it's been difficult, but I think the whole point, and what you originally asked me, the whole reason I do this is to normalize it. It is normal for, well, maybe not normal, but it's more normal maybe for like a Christian to become an atheist. As you said, it's more common, it's more heard of. There are much larger atheist communities. And it's just not normalized at all. As I said, there's such a huge shock factor. It's starting to become, and I love this kind of new wave of people that are just kind of normalizing that, look, we can be part of this Muslim community, but we just don't necessarily believe, like, we're ex-Muslims. But that's the thing as well. And I have a video that I titled "What I Love About Muslims," because I wanted to make that clear that, like, this isn't about the people, like, because I don't agree with the religion, like, Christians that leave Christianity, it's not like we don't like the people or we're like against the people. It's nothing like that. My family are
Absolutely.
Muslim. my mom is a devout Muslim. You know, she's a hijabi, everything. And like and I have a huge family. So like my whole family, bar my dad and my husband, are Muslims. So for me, it's like, you know, there are so many good things about the culture and the people. It's just, I don't believe in the religion. I don't believe in certain aspects of it. And I think there are things that need to be kind of reevaluated and looked at, you know, things that, you know, that maybe aren't for this day and time, and things that are causing oppression in certain parts of the world. And so issues that Muslims, I mean, the biggest sufferers are actually Muslims. You know, when people say like, you know, you're speaking on behalf of ex-Muslims, I'm like, yeah, but also Muslims, like they're the ones suffering too, like in kind of Saudi Arabia or in Iran. You know, they're the ones that are at the hands of kind of oppression and difficulty with stuff like this. So I'm speaking on behalf of like all these people, alongside many others. Obviously, I'm not the only voice. There are so many amazing other ex-Muslims that are kind of speaking out. And as I said, just trying to normalize dissent and not divide us. You know, in that video where I said what I love about Muslims, I was like, I speak about it to unite us in a way, because it's like, we shouldn't have to be shunned by our families, which most of us are. I mean, I've had so many people cut me off. As soon as I kind of said I don't believe, it's like, that's it, like we're done. And it's devastating. And it's like, sometimes it's worse. Like for me, at least, it wasn't my actual parents. You know, when it's people's parents and like their entire family, and they literally have no one, or they like live with their family, now they have to kind of go out into the streets. I mean, there's so many crazy stories. But it's just, I feel like if this can be normalized within families, and people can just think, okay, you have a different belief, and we'll just accept that, then it'll just make everyone's life so much easier.
I agree. And, you know, this is something I think I've said before on the show. If not, I'm going to say it now. If I ever became a Christian again, I would hope that I would not only still be friends with the atheist community, but like take joy in that, really. I think there's so many perspectives and knowledge and wisdom we can learn from people of other faiths, and of people who don't believe as well. I think that there's a value in having those relationships with people. Like if my son, if I ever have one, grows up and says he wants to be a Christian, I say, okay, you know, I might ask him questions, but you know, I'm going to ask him more questions than the average parent. Like that's going to happen. But it's like, I agree with you. It's like, well, like if you really believe in the Christian narrative or the Muslim narrative of this idea of free will, that people do choose or do not choose, then you have to let people make that choice. You know, and it seems like sometimes we don't often, at least in the Christian or Muslim world, like sometimes that choice doesn't feel as given to people. I think people are scared of dissent. I think it brings about these ideas of debauchery and like you said, like going against the grain and going against kind of established authority. And, you know, we're not going to make any progress unless we kind of have these conversations. And, more than anything, I want the ex-Muslim community in particular to be able to have a place at the table with the rest of us, ex-Christians, Christians, Muslims, whatever, and be able to feel safe having those conversations. And I think there's a lot of people, especially today, who always have in the ex-Muslim world, who don't feel safe having these conversations too. And I'm so glad to see that you are providing kind of a voice for people and giving people really strength and hope for a new world, I guess, a better tomorrow, that they don't have to feel like they're in danger anymore talking about this stuff. So it's really great to hear that you're doing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be a tough battle. I don't think it will be easy, but, you know, I think, you know, people find it difficult to kind of accept, like Muslims find it difficult, because I think the difference as well between like Islam and Christianity is within Islam, they believe like the word of God is their book. The Quran is the literal word of God. The Bible's not like that, right? It's not the literal word. It's like the disciples, right?
That depends on the specific denomination you're talking about, for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up in kind of two different denominational camps. One of them said that it was the word of God. One of them said it was written by a bunch of people. And so there was that conflict growing up in my own life. And I think people wrestle with that even today within the Christian community, obviously. So yeah, it's hard to make definitive statements about that kind of stuff.
Okay, fine. So that's a whole nother thing. But I mean, Muslims believe that the Bible's not the word of God.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the Torah is not the word of God, but the Quran is the literal word of God. And so what that means is it's sometimes difficult to get around things that was written like 1,400 years ago, and things about, that you are supposed to kill an apostate. It's hard to get around that extreme level of things because it's like, well, God said it. So it's a tough battle because we're kind of like, going between kind of, people that are taking things literally, and then anyway, it's a whole other thing. But yeah, it's
Yeah, I get you. There's structures there's power structures kind of built into these beliefs that are hard to disentangle. I think I see what you're saying there, because I think Islam is not the only religion that kind of does that. And historically, those power structures change, and when those power structures change, the interpretations and the beliefs kind of change, and there's definitely a relationship there for sure. Well, listen, guys, this is Mimzy from Mimzy Vids. If you're just now tuning in, she is an ex-Muslim who makes great content on YouTube. This is a live call-in show. The number is at the bottom of the screen there. Please call in if you can and just talk to us. We'd love to hear what you have to say. But before we get into the calls that we have right now, I want to get into some announcements really quick. Tomorrow is Atheist Day. So if you're around the Austin area, come on down to the Congress building around 11 o'clock, and we're going to have some speakers. Aaron Raw, Eric Murphy from here is going to be there. No Illusions from the Scathing Atheist podcast, and a whole bunch of other people here in the community. Seth Andrews as well is going to be making an appearance. Definitely check that out, and check out the Atheist Day. I believe it's .com or .org. Maybe, don't quote me on either of those for more information on that. We have our March newsletter for the ACA, so definitely look at that. We have a little clip of it here, I think, of what that looks like. If Mark's going to put it on the screen here, for those of you that are listening, just don't worry about this. So we have a newsletter that comes in every month for the members of the Atheist Community of Austin, and it's really cool. It's got all kinds of articles written by different people in the community, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. There's an online version available for reading as well. What was my next announcement? Gosh, I think I had another one somewhere. You know what? I'll probably remember it later. Mimzy, are you ready to take some calls? Okay, cool. Well, we have two calls here. I'm going to pick this one. This is Daryl in North Carolina. Daryl, how's it going? Hey, Daryl, you there? Okay, looks like we got some dead air on Daryl. Daryl, if you can hear me, I'm going to put you on hold. Go ahead and check in with our call screeners again if you are available. I'm going to go to our next call here. This is Jason in California. And Jason, you are on the air. What's up, Jason?
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Hello?
Hey,
Hello.
I can hear my show in the background. If you don't mind, just go ahead and muting that so that we don't pick it up on the audio.
This is Jason in California. And Jason, you are on the air. What's up, Jason? Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's up, Jason?
Hey, how's it going? Hello?
Jason, if you can hear me, please mute the show in the background. We can hear it on the air.
Oh. I can't hear you on my phone.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Hello?
Hey. Well, I'm going to put you on hold again, Jason, while our crew in the back kind of figures that out. And we're maybe getting some more calls here. It's a live show, folks. That's what happens. Sometimes things don't work the way they're supposed to. That's okay. I know I had another announcement in my head here somewhere. Oh, yes, I remember now. It's American Atheists. You should definitely check us out at American Atheists next month. It's going to be from April 19th to the 22nd, I believe, that weekend. It's Easter weekend. It's going to be in Cincinnati. Yeah, there it is on the screen there for those of you who are watching live. I might be there. We're kind of working some details out, but definitely some folks from the AXP crew will be there. Some Talk Heathen guys will be there. Eric Murphy and Jamie, you know those guys if you watch our shows here. So definitely come meet us there and come meet other people in the community as well. It's going to be a fun time. Yeah, I think we're kind of working on these calls here still. Mimzy, if you could, I'd love for you to tell me more about some of the projects that you're working on right now with your channel and just, to being on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, so I actually want to do more kind of documentary style stuff, like just kind of get some more stories of like women and kind of loads of people that are going through the same thing, leaving kind of religion, because I think there are so many stories out there that need to be told, and I think more and more people are finding the strength to come out and speak. Like now, it's as I said, it's very new. So yeah, I definitely want to kind of do stuff like that. Tomorrow, actually, for Atheist Day, I'm going to like a conference. It's an ex-Muslim women conference, which is really exciting in London. So if anyone's watching from London, definitely come along.
Sweet.
But yeah, no, so it'll be really good. But basically, just as I said, I want my channel to be kind of an all-round channel. I want it to be about Islam, but also I want to kind of incorporate other things. I don't want it to be just focused on one thing. So I think that's something that's quite important to me. But I definitely want to collaborate more as well with obviously we're doing this together, and I'd love to have you on my channel and like just speak to, yeah, it'd be so good to speak to kind of other people that have other experience, because I actually don't know much about like Christianity and like people's experiences kind of leaving that world. It's like a whole nother thing for me, so I'd love to just talk more about that. And
believe me, Mimzy, I know too much about Christianity, if anything. I'm definitely that guy that has like read all the like Bart Ehrman books and like all kinds of biblical scholarship and stuff. Like it's
Right.
kind of a thing for me. So yeah, I'd love to do that sometime, and that's really cool. Definitely other guys, other content creators that watch this stuff, get Mimzy on your channel. We need some more diversity in the scene here, some more voices. I think it's really awesome. So I think we can get to some calls here. Are you ready to go here, Mimzy?
Let's go.
All right, let's get over here to round two. I want to get to Dave, who is in Tucson, Arizona. Dave actually called in a few weeks ago talking about Jehovah's Witness and his aunt, and I think he's calling to give us an update. What's up, Dave? Dave, can you hear us? Oh, he dropped the call. Look at that. Wow, we're just losing everybody today. This is just crazy.
Camera time.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. That's what happens sometimes, guys. Like I said, I'm going to go back again to Daryl in North Carolina. Let's see if we can get Daryl on again. Hey, Daryl, you there?
Hello?
Hey, Daryl, how's it going?
Hi.
Hi. Did you want to talk to us about, I have a note here saying, asking us about paganism fitting into all of the world religions? Daryl, are you there?
All the world's... Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Well, we want to hear from you.
I want to hear about paganism and how it fits into your worldview.
How paganism fits into my worldview. Interesting. Paganism is kind of a broad term. It can be descriptive of a lot of different kinds of traditions and thoughts and philosophies. Did you have anything specifically in mind when you're talking about paganism?
Are you familiar with neo-paganism? The fact that it's a mixture of different views, how you view the world.
Yeah, I know that neo-paganism kind of is a blending of different traditions. My personal opinion on that, Dave, is, I'm very skeptical of people who are kind of syncretic towards their religious beliefs, because the more things you kind of try to combine, the less that they kind of work in tandem with each other. There's these kinds of, Christians kind of do this too. I know a lot of Christians who believe in the idea of karma, for example, whether like implicitly or explicitly, they kind of have this idea that if you do bad things, some sort of cosmic force will come and correct them in some way. And, that's not a Christian idea necessarily. That's kind of been associated more with other kinds of beliefs. And so if it wasn't written in the books, it seems to me like it's just kind of made up in some way, or it's just doesn't have the same kind of value that it would if it was there in the first place. So I feel kind of similar thoughts towards neo-paganism. I think it's kind of a mishmash of different things, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, to be honest. What do you think, Mimzy?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know too much about it, but I just know that a lot of bits and bobs from the Abrahamic religions do seem to derive from paganism, and even just the idea of like hellfire. I don't know if you know about the place in Jerusalem. It's like basically just like a pit of fire that the pagans used to like burn criminals in. Do you know about this? Is this something
I know about Geneva, or I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I believe in truth. I believe in finding who you are, and that's the religion. You ever heard of Thelema?
Sorry, Daryl, it's kind of hard to hear you. If you could speak a little more clearly, that'd be great.
You ever heard of Thelema?
Thelema. You know, it sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley, yes. You're talking about now Aleister Crowley. Now that's associated with Satanism, right?
No, not at all.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of Antoine LaVey, I think.
Yeah. Anton LaVey is Satanism.
Yes.
Aleister Crowley is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of law. Love is the law, love under will.
Okay, and that's kind of your world philosophy?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Well, that's really neat. Did you want to talk about that more, or?
Yeah, it's less about more what you want. It's about finding out who you are. It takes some time. You got to figure out who you are as a person.
Okay.
You can do that through meditation, through prayer, if you're a Christian, or you find out who you are as a person, and then be that person.
Yeah, I mean, sounds pretty simple to me. I don't see anything in there that immediately strikes me as being faulty.
Was that to do with paganism?
Yes, it's really attributed to paganism because it's not associated with the Abrahamic gods or the. It's not Muslim or Jewish or Christian either. It's figure out who you are as a person. Be that person, and you will not find problems. There are a lot of gods that try to tell you one thing or another. Gods are one and plenty. Originally, I called in and said, hey, about paganism, about multiple gods. That's kind of the point. There is no God. There is no singular point that we should find out. What the point is you got to find out who you are as a person. Live that. Why do you have to assign it to some god or some everything else? Just be who you are.
I like that. You know, it kind of sounds like secular humanism to me, almost.
It is. You know what that is? It is really
cool. Well, Daryl,
it's a different way to approach it.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. You know, I am a big advocate of secular humanism. That's kind of the life stance I take. And it sounds like this is another worldview that seems, pretty compatible with my beliefs. I'm going to say, yeah, I encourage you, Daryl. It sounds cool.
Me too.
All right. Well, Daryl, thanks again for calling. That was an interesting conversation. And be sure to call again next time. Yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting how we can talk about, I don't want to say new age philosophies, but definitely, you know, newer kinds of philosophies that have sprung up in the 20th century and beyond. You see a lot of good and bad things that come from. Secular humanism, humanism itself isn't as new, but it's a relatively recent phenomenon where we're talking about the tradition and history of ideas. And with the new age kind of stuff, and I'm including neo-paganism in that. Maybe that's not proper, but it seems like I was kind of talking about earlier, there's a mishmash of different ideas that don't always blend together and end up kind of being this kind of woo. What do you think about that, Mimzy?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about. I don't know too much about like what he was kind of discussing in terms of but yeah, I think people have started to do that where they kind of mishmash everything. And like, as long as you're peaceful and cool and like you love people and you don't want to hurt anyone, like I don't care. Like it's all good, man.
I like
I
that.
mean, he sounds like, yeah. I mean, like deep down, I feel like I'm just like a true hippie, and I just like peace and love and like whatever. It's all good.
That's great.
But yeah.
I love that. Yeah, you know, it's funny because I remember the last time I went to Barnes and Noble, you always see the New Age books and the spiritual books and the Christian books and the Muslim books. They're all in the same section now. You know, in this one part. Oh yeah, for sure. At least at the Barnes and Nobles I've been going to, and it's like, I guess modern secular society has kind of relegated all of this into this one kind of corner category, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about, but. Yeah, I think that's how a lot of Americans kind of view religion. I think it's kind of a mishmash of whatever they want to believe in some ways. And that could be good and bad. But, you know,
if you take all the good things from stuff, then it's fine. I mean, it's interesting, though, how, like, the karma thing has become, like, that's, like, it's from Hinduism. It's totally, like, random. Like, it's like everyone kind of believes that now. Like, it's, like, a normal thing to be like, oh, you're going to get bad karma. Like, it's interesting, though. But,
yeah, especially just the specific use of karma as a word. I mean, I'm sure there's other kinds of worldviews that have had a similar idea to it, but taking exclusively from terms that are used in like Hindi culture and stuff is really fascinating to me. It just kind of shows the blend of the world that we have now. I'm going to try to get to these other two callers that we have here, but I want to encourage people. This is live. We want to take more calls. We definitely have some spots open, so please call in at the number at the bottom of the screen if you're watching live. Let's try to get Jason on again back in California. Jason, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Finally. What's up, man?
All right. What's up, brother? I'm not sure if you remember me, but I talked to you once before.
You know, I've talked to some other people named Jason. You might have to be a bit more specific.
Well, I was trying to talk about objective morality, and we got a little deep in, Bible fallacy and whatnot.
Yeah, I believe we called in about Christianity in general, and then you wanted to talk about objective morality, and it was kind of at the end of the call, and I kind of wanted to move on. But now we can talk about objective morality now, if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, you know, because before I would say we could talk about which God or you know which religion to go by, we would probably have to establish a basis for is God actually real? Is there a God? So
yeah, I agree with that. That's where I wanted
to start with. Objective morality and origins of time-space continuum.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this, because are you saying that objective morality is evidence or proof of a God?
I would say that objective morality has no basis without an objective standard.
Okay.
Or objective.
Okay. I can see that, but you're not necessarily saying that objective morality itself is proof of like a creator of some kind.
No, yeah, yes, I am. I'm saying yes, I am saying that.
Okay, cool. Well, Mimzy, do you have any questions you want to ask Jason about this?
It's interesting because I never thought about it that way, like that way round. Because for me, it was like, I don't believe in the religion, therefore I don't believe in God, rather than like like thinking about a God initially. But I mean, I don't agree that that objective morality comes from a God. It's it's something that it's difficult to say, because what God are we talking about? Is it just
I would love to talk to you about which God I believe it is and why, and possibly why you were pushed away from your religion. But I would like to establish a basis for God. So if we can establish that there is an objective truth, say there is an answer to 2 + 2 = 4, then that means out of the infinite answers, infinite possibilities, there is one answer.
Maybe, but objective truth and objective morality are kind of two different topics. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to talk about either, but I'd love it if we could just kind of focus in on one or the other or something else.
Okay. Well, let's focus in on morality on the understanding that morality is truth.
Okay.
It is an objective truth. That is objective morality.
That it's an objective truth that morality exists, or that morality is objective.
So, is it objectively true that it is morally wrong to torture a baby?
Okay.
Would be a pretty.
How would we know if something is objectively true in that sense?
Do you believe that it is objectively true that it's morally wrong to rape a child?
Well, sure.
Or do you think that it's more up to the individual and it's more of an opinion, subjective based opinion?
Well, either answer to that question. I mean, that's still my beliefs, and my beliefs don't necessarily make something objectively true or not. So I'm not sure if like me answering whether I think something is objectively true or not makes it objectively true. Does that make sense?
Yes. So do you believe there's only one answer for 2 + 2?
Do I believe there's one answer for 2 + 2? I guess that's a mathematics question. That's kind of different from like a morality kind of question, don't you think?
Well, it is a truth that we understand of math, and it is a constant that we can go based off the laws of logic. We can deduce and infer.
Maybe, but I almost think that math is almost something that we kind of create too. I think it's something that it's a system that was definitely come up by humans. I actually teach math to a group of kids, and whenever I do that, like you can tell like this stuff isn't as intuitive as we kind of make it seem. Like if you show a kid 1 + 1, they don't like. Especially if we're talking about like really young kids, that's not something they immediately grasp. They have to know the symbols and they have to know the abstractions that kind of come with that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So, but it's less of us inventing math. Rather, we discovered a constant in our paradigm. Would you, in a way to would you agree?
So I could see what you're saying in the sense that there could be constants of morality that we could discover. But even if there were constants of morality that we could discover, how would we know that they're objectively true or not?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Without God as a standard, without an objective standard, you can't say baby rape is wrong. You can only say, in your opinion, you don't like it.
Yeah.
You can't say it's objectively wrong.
Go for it, Mimzy.
For me, like, I kind of struggled with this, so I don't know what kind of background yours is, but, I felt like it was immoral, for example, for a person to be persecuted because they were homosexual. And I was taught and believed that God was against homosexuality. So it was like, that was from my own moral compass that I couldn't stand by that. And I was taught that, this is God's morality, that homosexuals weren't allowed to be homosexual and they should be punished, whether it's in this land or this country or this world or in the next world, in hellfire. So I don't know what your beliefs on that.
So homosexuality, actually, that's a pretty good place to start because, I do believe it is a sin, absolutely, but we are all sinners. So yeah, that's the whole part about grace and faith, grace by faith. If you are homosexual, you are definitely a sinner. That does not mean you're going to hell.
Okay. But Jason, what would you say to other Christians who say that homosexuality isn't a sin? And they're saying that they're basing their standards based on their own biblical interpretations. Or maybe I know Christians that have said that they felt God tell them, like, it's okay to be who they are. I mean, in that sense, it seems to me that they're using God as their standard as well, but we're kind of getting different results from that.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's one of the biggest problems with these sects such as Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness. They are twisting the words in the Bible to create a new way of thinking that is actually it ensnares a lot of people. And when they finally find out that it's not true and they find out the problems with it, they want to throw God away. They don't want to just throw away that one sect and continue their search. But
again,
that's a big problem.
Really, I want to get to the heart of this, Jason. I want to know, how do you know that they're twisting it and that you're not actually twisting it?
Okay, so the Bible says that he wrote the truth on all men's hearts. Okay, so we all can know truth without even the Bible, even though the Bible makes it a whole lot easier and it is a weapon against spiritual immorality. I know that homosexuality is a sin because it says it in the Bible, and because of my own feelings on it. It's probably the thing that I would want to not happen to me more over anything else would be to be taken homosexually. I can't think of much worse on a morally. I mean, that's just how I feel. It's written on my heart.
But you understand though that and I'm sorry to interrupt, Jason, but I know other people who feel differently, who feel in their heart that this thing is okay. So I'm wondering, like, why should one person's feelings matter more than someone else if we're interpreting what's objectively morally good in this case?
So if we're talking about what is sacred, I would say sex is sacred. Sex is not just for pleasure. Sex is, and in the Bible it actually says right there, it says that sex is only to be performed under the constraint of marriage, and then marriage is for a man and a woman that become one in the flesh. And the woman, there's different roles within a marriage that creates a symbiosis to where marriage is actually a healthy thing.
Okay.
And where a man has a role of providing and protecting, whereas a woman is more of the nurturer.
So what I'm kind of hearing, I'm kind of hearing that you're using the Bible as kind of your standard. Basically, like, if it's not your feelings, you go to the Bible to see if this is true. What makes the Bible more of an authority on your life than, say, I don't know, the Quran or some other books?
Okay, so that's the whole point. See, that's why I go to the Bible, like, for someone who would say that they're Christian and that they also advocate for homosexual marriage, which I don't care if you go out and find some pastor to marry you. Well, I do care. I wish you wouldn't, for your own sake. But I don't care. If you do it, I'm not going to stop you from doing it. But that's the problem. The Bible is infallible morally, and it isn't proven wrong.
Ooh.
And it never. So then we're getting back into to.
Do you know the Bible is infallible?
Absolutely.
How do you know that the Bible is infallible?
Because it's God's word. Okay, so.
But how do we know it's God's word?
So can we talk about, and we could come right back to this, but we need to establish a basis for there being a God in the first place.
Maybe so.
Origins.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Time-space continuum. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I'm not sure what the time-space continuum has to do with the Bible being true, though. Like the Bible being infallible.
I promise you, I'm headed somewhere with this, bud.
Okay,
I promise.
I'll let you give your spiel, but if we're going off a little topic, I gotta narrow it back down because I let a lot of people talk on this show, and sometimes we don't get anywhere because we kind of go on tangents and things, myself included on that, by the way.
That's why I wanted to start with: is there a God?
Okay.
So if we can establish the origins of time-space continuum, I mean, I know a big one today is, the Big Bang. Okay, and something from nothing, absolute nothing, which is hard to understand. I've heard it referred to as what a rock thinks about, is kind of a good way to understand what actual nothing is. But I'm talking, a lot of scientists say, well, there was an energy and a vacuum no, that's not nothing. So,
do you know that the world, that space-time continuum came from nothing?
Well, it came from God.
Okay.
But in a sense of anything pertaining to the space-time continuum, no, that was not the nothing. There was nothing related to the space-time continuum before God, which is the only thing that was not created, the only being that had not created.
Okay, well, I got to ask you then, how do you know it was God? How do you know it was Yahweh?
Well, what I'm saying is, you need a mover.
Okay,
you need a banger.
Sure, but how do you know that? But okay, well, I mean, we could go as far as to give you like, yeah, okay, maybe there has to be a mover, maybe there has to be some sort of prime creator and stuff, or whatever the term is. That's not what the term is, but a prime mover. I was about to say prime directive, but that's another thing. Right. But like and we talked about this with an apologist last week that kind of came in with kind of the same argument that, there has to be this kind of big mover to start it all. But I still don't know how we could know that, first of all, that it was one God, or if it even was a God, or more specifically, the Christian God. Because, I mean, Mimzy over here had this belief that it was the God it was Allah, it was somebody else, it was, and it came with all these other things, and that the Quran had jurisdiction over people and not the Bible. So, I'm failing to see kind of the connection of how we go from a prime mover to the Christian God. And maybe you can help me.
Okay. So awesome. So if we can first establish the basis for a prime mover, or a being God that was not created, that is outside of the time-space continuum.
I mean, I'll just give it to you. I'll just say, like, look, sure, it was a prime mover. I just want to know how you know it's a Christian God. Okay, so if we can establish the fact that something does not come from nothing, and that it must come from an intelligent mind that decided to create, because it was a decision, obviously, because it had a beginning. So, okay, so let's say there is a God. I don't know, like, how do you know it was an intelligent mind? Or any kind of mind?
Well, because it decided, because there was a point in time, and most physicists agree, that it was, everything came into being, at once. All matter. You can't add or subtract matter from our universe.
Uh-huh.
And time goes eternally, or they don't believe that time goes eternally in the past. So that would mean there's an eternal amount of past moments, which would mean we would never be able to come to today.
Okay,
because
but I'm still wondering how you know it's a mind, like it was a decision maker, and maybe it was something else that we don't understand.
Because it happened.
Well,
because it happened.
Because it happened. I mean,
so
I'm not sure.
If it happened, that means it's a decision.
I don't think things happening mean that they have to be a decision.
Well, you might be thinking along, like, within your understanding of chemical reactions, where this needs to happen before this happens in sequence. What you're thinking about.
I'm just wondering how you know that it's a mind and everything, because you haven't gotten me that far, and maybe Mimzy can chime in.
I mean, I think I get what he's saying. He's saying that, like, I mean, obviously I don't personally agree, but he's saying that basically because the God had created this kind of exquisite design and decided to create, and have the Big Bang and have everything happen, that makes him intelligent. Is that what you were saying? Like, because it must be of intelligence.
Yes, and not only that, I mean, you could look into DNA, and now we're seeing messages and actual patterns and books. If you could,
and how complex, everything is, so that it must be an intelligent being or whatever.
A message needs a messenger, right? That's it's basic philosophy.
Yeah, so I'm with Dan. I'm if we establish that, let's just, for the sake of the argument, establish there's a God. I would really like to know. I actually have loads of questions, actually, but we'll start with this. But I would really like to know, like, why is it the Christian God? So there's a God. He's created everything. Why is it the Christian?
Okay. So then we would have to go to. So that's why I wanted to start with origin and establish a base for a prime mover, and then move on to, is there an objective morality? This is how I came to my.
I'm not sure that's what she's asking, though, Jason. I think she, like me, she's asking how you know it's the Christian God.
I understand.
Do you have to prove objective morality before you can prove God? Like, is that a necessary?
Yeah, it is very helpful. Okay. Very helpful.
Can we go with what's... Go on, Mimzy.
I was just going to say, I would really like to know, like, your personal opinion, like, rather than just, like, kind of, well, this is what we like, what drives your belief, like, your own personal, like, I know there's a God, I know that Christianity is true, and this is why.
Yes.
I want to know that.
So okay. So basically, this is how I found God, and it's not a faith, it's a knowledge. I know for sure, and it's the only thing I do know. There's a lot of things I don't know. All else is based on maximal maximal probability and probability math. But, so God is the only thing I do know, because you need a prime mover. It becomes a circular, right where it becomes the circular argument.
Is that your only reason? Like, because there must be... Oh, sorry, did I just interrupt you? Were you going to say more?
So right when I found out that there is a prime mover, because there has to be something outside of the time-space continuum. So you're not going to find him within the time-space continuum. Well, he's omnipotent. He's through the time-space continuum, and it came from him. So once you find that out, and then you move on to objective morality, which I will never not believe in objective morality. That's why I can be mad if someone rapes someone. I can be mad, and I can stop it passionately. And I'm very passionate about truth. That's why I can say things are right and wrong. So I believe in objective morality. So if I can believe in a primary mover and objective morality, that means that I believe in a loving God, because life is beautiful. Life is so beautiful. And now this is where it gets hard to talk to atheists a lot of times, because they refuse to acknowledge the sixth sense, I guess you could call it, which is, love and understanding and personal revelation and just knowing in your heart, I guess you could say, where people say follow your heart instead of your mind. Mm-hmm. Your mind's just a computer. Your heart is your compass. They call it the moral compass. So if you can't use your moral compass, we will never come to an understanding. If you do believe in a moral compass where you can say things are wrong and right, absolutely, then yes, through personal revelation and that understanding, I realize that God is loving. And how I realize that is, I would go through every bad thing I've ever been through, which is quite a lot, I must say. That's for another talk. I would go through all the hells I've ever been through for one moment with maybe my mother or my daughter or someone that I truly love, and it's so scandalously in my favor, and I find myself being unappreciative a lot of times, and this is one of my pearls that really helps me to understand how lucky I really am and how spoiled I really am. So I found that he is a loving God. Mm-hmm. Because why haven't I killed myself? I don't want to die. I want to live.
Jason, I don't mean to interrupt your story, but Mimzy comes from a religion that has a lot of personal revelations about, and prophets and people who have said that this is true because God has told me this thing. And I think you would agree, at least, that you don't believe that that's true in the same way that I don't believe that a lot of what those people are saying are true. But are the reasons that we believe those things are true the same, or do you think they might be different? Because I think the reasons I believe they aren't true are because I don't see a mechanism as to how that could be true, and they don't seem to be as consistent with each other, whereas you're saying it has to be the God of Christianity because of some reasons that you've given.
I thought you were saying, sorry, I thought you were saying it was a personal revelation, like not in the sense of like prophets, but like when you mentioned sixth sense, like, is it something like a spiritual thing you've experienced? That's what it sounded like to me.
Well, a lot of prophets have sixth sense experiences. At least maybe they wouldn't use those terms, but I think that's where a lot of that comes from. If not, observing the things around them, right? I don't know. At least in Islam, I think isn't that true? I mean, they have messages from God that are kind of personal.
Sorry, I've forgotten the caller's name. What
this is Jason.
Jason. So no, but is it something that have you experienced something yourself where you've because I've heard this from Muslims, but it sounded like that's what you were saying. Am I mistaken?
No, in a sense, you're correct. Absolutely, it is personal. It's partly personal revelation, but my search for God never once was driven by personal revelation. It was driven more from a visceral, intrinsic need for meaning and purpose in life, for it to have any significance whatsoever.
Wow.
And
I'm sorry, we keep interrupting. You've been doing really great, by the way. Thanks for talking to us. Do you think that we could have meaning without God? Do you think that's possible?
No, you cannot. Why? Because mathematically, you're infinitesimally reduced to absolute nothing. nothingness. Every moment, billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of years, the highest number you can think of is absolutely nothing when you're speaking of infinity. And that is a very scary, scary thought. But that is hell. That is what hell is infinite without God.
If we are like really good people, let's just say, even in terms of like Christianity, let's say like we give to charity, like we are like wholesome and like have a family, and like we're all the kind of, we hold very similar ideals to Christians, but we're not Christian. Would we go to hell?
No, and that is the gospel, and that's why. Okay, so real quick, I believe in a loving God, and I believe that a loving God, obviously through inference and my own understanding of love, because He made us in His image, I can then determine that He would give us a message. He would send a way to know truth. So He would try to basically communicate with His creation. So through his communication, we understand that salvation with God is not attained through works, but by grace. So no, we are all sinners, but God knows your heart. And well, here's another thing. A lot of people will say, I see in the comments here, a lot of people will say, well, it's the best world God can muster in a sarcastic tone. No, He needs the contrast to prove the truth. Because, again, objective truth, it's just like light. That's actually why they call Jesus the light, is because any physicist worth his sailing knows that darkness is actually nothing. It is only the lack of light. So but in our dualistic paradigm understanding of reality, we can understand what is not light, which is darkness. And that is exactly why He needs evil. And you can't have evil without good. You can't have good, which is objective truth, without an objective prime mover.
I hear you, Jason. I hear you. There are so many things we could explore, and I totally wish we had more time to have this conversation. But I do need to get to some other callers. But Jason, I think we made some more progress this week than we did last week, and I'm really happy about that. So if you want to keep calling into the show and want to call in next week, I'd be down for that, man.
It's up to you, man. I don't want to bother you.
Hey, well, we have some other calls we got to get to now, but yeah, I mean, think about it. If you have some time next week, maybe we can continue this discussion. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. But one more thing, if I could.
Very quickly. Give you 30 seconds.
Very quickly. Mimzy.
Yeah.
A lot of things in the Quran are easily refuted. And look at Muhammad. He's a warlord. He beheaded 600 people. He slept with young girls and married them. Jesus did nothing of the sort. Jesus is completely different. I would say that not throw away God because of a false understanding of Him. And I wish you the best. Now, maybe I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Jason.
Jason.
Take care. Man. Well, I think we just got evangelized there, Mimzy. What did you think about that?
That was my first time. I kind of feel honored. Oh, thanks. No, but that was really fun. I have a question, though, if I can ask you. There's something I'm confused about Christianity.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I hear this a lot. Like, Christians say, like, we're sinners and, like, we're all sinners. But, like, then I hear them say that Jesus died for our sins, right?
Yes.
So how does that work?
That's a great question. You'd have to ask a Christian how that works, because I don't know.
Okay. There's just no explanation.
Well, I mean, there's some theological ideas of the Jews believing in this idea of having a covenant with God, and that Jesus kind of fulfills this covenant with His people, and that because the Jewish people had to make sacrifices to atone for their sins, essentially. And so Jesus, instead of having to use animals and these other kinds of sacrifices, Jesus kind of became the ultimate sacrifice for people's sins. So that's kind of one theological view on how, that's the one that I grew up with and I'm most familiar with. There are other kinds of ideas about that, but that's one interpretation.
So if he died for the sins, then you're not sinners. Great. Right?
Yeah, so that's an interpretation too, and I don't know if that's what he believes. It kind of sounds like it, but there is two different schools of thought on that, on whether or not you have to, Christianity, there's always schools of thoughts on everything, whether or not everybody is saved, or you have to specifically have a belief, or whether you have to continue with action. I mean, you ask a Christian, they're going to ask 12 different Christians, you're going to get 12 different answers, you know? So.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's the same. It's the same with Muslims. I think it's just the way that religion goes, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Well, we have a call here who we actually kind of arranged this ahead of time. I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, is your name pronounced Amir, sir? Amir, you're on the air.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going? Please tell me how to pronounce your name so I don't get it wrong.
Okay. Well, yeah, in the West, it's mostly pronounced as Amir.
Okay.
The exact vernacular pronunciation would be Amir.
Gotcha.
Which, it's a little difficult to tongue that for most people out here. So Amir works.
Okay, Amir, great.
Actually, a Semitic name as well.
Okay, fantastic. We had talked before because I think you wanted to ask Mimzy a question in particular. Is that right?
Actually, not really.
Okay.
I think we got introduced to our common friend Robert Stanley on the Right to Reason podcast.
Yes.
I've been on his show a few times, and he thought it'd be a good idea for me to get in touch with you and maybe call in and share a few thoughts. So I am familiar with the organized ex-Muslim activist community, as I would put it, let me share a couple of thoughts on that.
Sure.
First of all, I'm a Muslim myself, and I'm an Ahmadiyya Muslim. So we believe that a gentleman in India in the 19th century by the name of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was the promised Messiah for the end times. So as everybody knows, that the return of Jesus is commonly expected between Muslims and Christians, right? Both expect that Jesus is coming back as the second coming. We believe that it's metaphorical and it's symbolic, and it is fulfilled in the personage of the gentleman that I just mentioned. And we say that, to support that from a biblical verse as well, just like Jesus said that John the Baptist is the second coming of Elijah, we believe that this second coming is going to happen in a similar fashion. Anyway, to get past that, what I was going to say was that a couple of things. First of all, I'm really glad that the ex-Muslim community exists, all right, in a way, because I believe that freedom of conscience is a core Islamic tenet. All right, there's a verse in the Quran that says, "La ikraha fid din." There is no compulsion in religion, and there can be no compulsion in religion. So, I think that the ex-Muslim community is right about the fact that there are restrictions, I would even say persecutions, limitations, and other kinds of issues with apostasy in Islam. I think from a cultural perspective, all right, simply from a cultural perspective. And, Muslim communities, Muslim societies. So our society is very new. It's only 19th century. It's very unorthodox. And in fact, we suffer from very systemized persecution in Muslim countries. In Pakistan, for example, where I'm from, we're not even allowed to call ourselves Muslims. And if we do, as far as apostasy goes, which Mimzy just mentioned, we can actually be put to death over there. And if we don't get mob lynched before that. But anyway, we're a revival movement. And the thing I wanted to bring up was that freedom of conscience is a core Islamic value. It's historically and academically proven and vetted, I would say, through academic historians. And I can share some references in that, but I don't want to make this too much of an academic discussion. I don't think that would be fair on Mimzy either, if, try to push this into a debate or anything. I think that from that perspective, it's really great that the ex-Muslim community is there and that they're working on making things better for other people who consciously want to leave the religion. On the other hand, as far as the other aspect that I've noticed about the ex-Muslim community is this criticism of Islam. So I think that we can engage on an intellectual level, on a reasonable level, on a peaceful level, and talk about some of these criticisms, which I believe are unfounded. So let me just take the first one, the one that Mimzy mentioned, which is apostasy, that in Islam, an apostate is supposed to get killed. So actually, Sam Harris, I think both you guys would know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably one of the most outspoken voices, not just with what is known as the new atheist community, which is, I guess the way to define that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's not just about believing God, but it's also about getting rid of religion.
Well,
he
maybe.
who's also
that's going to depend on different people's interpretation of what that movement is. Maybe Sam Harris thinks that. I don't know if every single speaker in the quote unquote new atheist movement, because that's a really bad political term in a lot of ways, and I'm not going to go into it right now. But yeah, so I think that's kind of a thing that I think a lot of people outside of the community assume that people in the community don't necessarily hold. But I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I know you guys don't like that term, but I think from what we gather, from what we hear from Sam Harris and from Richard Dawkins and their activity, I don't think it's off to say that.
Yeah,
but
I don't think the impression isn't warrant. I'll give you that much for sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. But what I was getting to was that even Sam Harris, who has really studied the Quran, and he's pretty anti-Quran and anti-Islam, has said that there is actually no verse in the Quran that mentions apostasy, or mentions death punishment for apostasy. It just doesn't exist. So in fact, the one that I mentioned, this verse, that there can be no compulsion in religion, that's there. And there's actually other verses I can mention as well that talk about freedom of conscience. And I'll just, and then I'll let you guys talk. I'll just mention one thing real quick, is that from a historical perspective, right, from an academic perspective, I've done a lot of study in this, and I don't want to make this about, historical academia. But if you just take one of these, like, for example, Richard Hart, right, who's a historian and a writer, in his book, The 100 Most Influential People of History, right, he ranked Muhammad as number one. And he says that in the opening comments of that book, that, his choice for number one is going to be questioned by a lot of people. But the reason he picked Muhammad was because he was supremely successful at the secular level. So, maybe this might take some time to digest for some people, not just at the religious level, but also at the secular level. Muhammad's history in Medina, the arbitration that he did in Medina between the Jews and the Christians and the polytheists and the Muslim community, there was freedom of religion. People came for judicial, executing judicial issues, and they were allowed to do it per their own religious law, or whichever religious law that they wanted to follow, or if Muhammad was to pass judgment on it, according to Islamic law. Later on, when the Islamic Empire grew, I recently read a book called The Silk Roads by Dr. Peter Frank Open, who's the director of Byzantine Studies in Oxford. And he's also mentioned the same thing. There's lots of historical references that talk about new churches and synagogues opening, under Islamic rule in Islamic lands, and other kinds of stuff. So anyway, I'll stop there. But I do agree that Islamic tradition, all right, in certain ways, Islamic culture has fallen off the wayside. It's been distorted through a drawn out, I would say, taken over by these jurisprudence experts or scholars, or the ulema as they're often referred to, and through history, it's been highly politicized, and you do have laws which are passed as Sharia, and in some Muslim nations that say that apostates should be killed, but it's completely wrong. It's completely un-Islamic, and we as a revival movement are trying to change that and bring the Muslims back to the true original Islam, which I would say fully invested in freedom of conscience. And we can take on, whether it's the ex-Muslim community or the Christian apologistic community or the atheists, the good atheists, like you guys, not the new atheists. We can take all those people. We can discuss this at an intellectual level. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Wow, what a well thought out and just well spoken paragraphs of information. I can tell you're a writer. that was very, very well done. Thank you for sharing all that with us. I need to hear Mimzy's thoughts on this, because I know she's been stewing. I can tell.
There's a couple of things. I don't know what the question in there was, but
It wasn't a question. I think it was just some comments on just, yeah.
Okay. I wanted to just comment just quickly on there is no compulsion in Islam, because I hear that one quite a lot, but it's, I mean, literally the next verse, I'm just trying to get the verse up.
Ooh, she's digging. Digging.
Because it's in the same area. So it's like there's no compulsion in the religion. It's because the right course is clear from the wrong. So it's not this idea, that it's kind of like, I hear this a lot where people kind of quote things, but it's like, if you read the full thing, I didn't even read the full thing. It goes on to basically say, I mean, just to summarize, it's not saying you can kind of do what you want. It's like, there's no compulsion because it's clear for you to see that this is the right way, rather than it just being kind of on its own and being like, and I as I said, I hear that quite a lot, but I'm confused as to why the rest of it isn't taken into consideration most of the time. But and also there's tafsir, which is basically, for people who don't know, it's kind of like all the scholars, there's various scholars that have written tafsir, which is basically the explanation of each verse, and like what it exactly means. So it's not just taken normally on face value. It's like these kind of scholars from years ago that kind of translate even just the verse and kind of go into detail. And it's never been understood as a kind of, this is why you can basically kind of do what you want, which is what I think people are trying to say. I'm not sure if that's what you meant by it, but and you're right. There isn't an exact thing about killing apostasies in the Quran. That is a hadith. It's just more that the Quran talks about the Sunnah, which is the way of God. The way of the Prophet Muhammad. Sorry, it's like 1 o'clock here. So it is the way that you should kind of follow to the T, and that's kind of mentioned by God. But there are many things. I think I know the kind of Ahmadiyya community are slightly different, there are so many sects, obviously, the same as the Christians. We have so many different sects, and there are kind of people that don't like to take the hadiths. So if anyone doesn't know, there are two kind of main scriptures. We have the Quran, which is supposedly the word of God, which I would say like most Muslims take like to the T and take every word, that is the word of God. Most of them do, most kind of sects. And then there's the hadiths, which is like the sayings and the doings of the Prophet. So it's kind of like they're supposed to go hand in hand, because the Quran is like, what you're supposed to do, and the hadith is how you do it. So they kind of go hand in hand for most Muslims. But then there are sects like I think where this gentleman's come from, that Amir, right, where they kind of say, that I think a lot of the hadiths are fabricated and aren't accurate, and I would say that there's a if we just focus on the Quran, then for the sake of this kind of discussion, just otherwise we'll be going around, but even within the Quran there are things that us as ex-Muslims we kind of don't agree with, that there is kind of the women's testimony, for example, that's in the Quran, that women have half that of a man's. But I mean, what do you have a question, or is it just you wanted to kind of, what did you want to go into? Because we can go into any area you like. I'm happy to do that.
No, not a particular question. I just called in because Dan and I spoke briefly before the show, and he thought it'd be a good idea to call in, maybe touch on some of these subjects. So I think maybe we can just talk about a couple of things that you just mentioned about verse 257, which mentions that there is no compulsion in religion, and then I think you said that right after that it's saying that well, you know what's right and wrong, so you better pick the right path, right? It's saying that there's no compulsion in religion, and I think we have to interpret it in a way that it doesn't readily conflict within the same verse. So I think what it's saying is that right is distinct from wrong, good is distinct from bad. So choose the right path, and that's what the Quran is. That's what Scripture is. It's a conversation from God to people, to us. That's what we believe in as religious people, as Muslims and Christians and people of other faith. So we are going to get addressed in that way. But at the same time, God's not allowing anybody to compel anybody else in religion. In fact, there's verses in the Quran where Muhammad is specifically told that you are just a deliverer of a message. You have no authority to compel anyone. And in fact, God tells Muhammad that it's not you who decides who comes into the religion and whose heart is won over. It is I who decide. So I think the no compulsion part is pretty clear if you do a more consolidated, holistic review of the Quran. I don't think that there's a ready conflict within the verse itself. The second thing that you mentioned was about the Hadith and Sunnah. The thing I would like to say is that the Hadith is a secondary text. I think you mentioned it in a light like it's hand in hand. I wouldn't agree with that, and I don't think that most Muslims would agree with it either. And I think that opinion and that view is changing very rapidly in the Muslim world. There's a lot of Muslims who are even rejecting body of the Hadith, or there's a group called the Quranists who actually reject the Hadith altogether. Hadith, by the way, is the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is that while Muslims believe that the Quran is infallible, it's the spoken word of God, the Hadith is not. The Hadith was basically formulated, developed about a good century to 2 centuries later through oral traditions, and it's not considered infallible, although I think that the tradition itself has taken it more at face value and maybe seen it as infallible, and I think that's where some of the problems in Islamic jurisprudence are coming from. But if we see anything in the Hadith, which really, so this is a view of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and our founder has expressed this view that, if we do use the Hadith, but if we see something that is readily in conflict with the Quran and it cannot be reconciled, in some acceptable fashion, then you're okay to reject it or to say that there's some distortion or some problem with that Hadith. There really isn't a theological issue with that.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow. And these are, oh man, go on.
Oh, okay.
Finish up.
I was just going to say, there were so many things I was going to say. Now I'm trying to narrow it down.
Yes, these are such great things, and we could definitely, I think both people who are on this call agree, could definitely talk more about this for sure. I'd love it if Mimzy could just kind of wrap it up with some closing comments on this, and then maybe we could just call it a night on this call. But I gotta say, Amir, thanks again for calling. This is really great. Mimzy, do you have anything more you want to say about this? I know it's a lot, but.
Just, we could talk after because I'm interested to discuss this with you. But just very quickly, with the no compulsion thing, I don't think Muslims, ex-Muslims, even argue necessarily that that's not one of our kind of main problems or main things to say that people are forced to be Muslim necessarily. We're not saying that that's kind of within Islam, but it's definitely, as you said, kind of become part of the culture from the Hadiths. But there's a whole nother side I could go into, but we don't have time to do that. But there's lots of kind of evidences of why, the historical side and why those aspects are.
Do you have any videos you could recommend or any kind of material you've done?
There's so many things out there. Definitely have a scroll through my channel, but I'm happy to have a chat with you after, and we can kind of go through it. But I've done a video on even on ISIS actually, and in that one I kind of spoke a lot about kind of within the Quran, the Quranic verses. It's not just Hadith, but the kind of the violent things that I find that we need to kind of steer from as a people, and they're in the Quran, so it's not even the Hadith. So I do kind of go into quite detail in that video.
Great. Awesome. Well, Amir, thanks again for calling. This was a really fantastic conversation. I feel so bad that we have to cut this off now, because we could talk about this for so much longer. We definitely have some other calls we got to get to, but hey, thanks again, man. That was really, really great.
Totally understandable. If I may just quickly, on a last note, just mention that I've been involved in a project with the Ahmadiyya community to basically intellectually respond to most of these kinds of allegations. And if I may just mention the website that we have up and running now on that, it's called www.quranfacts. That's quranfactsaltogether.com. And as far as allegations go against violence, that there's violence in the Quran, there's supremacy of Muslims in the Quran, freedom of religion and conscience, taqiyya, deception, slavery, oppression of women, all these are mentioned and answered with specific verses that are repeatedly brought up as allegations. So I would love for Mimzy to check it out at quranfacts.com, and all of your viewers to check it out. And, we can talk about some of that stuff maybe at a future time. That'd be great.
Maybe I can get you two connected.
Thanks very much for taking my call.
Oh, for sure. I'll have to get you two connected maybe after the show. Maybe they'll talk about this more on Facebook
definitely.
or something.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Amir.
Thanks, Amir. Thanks again. I'm so sorry, Mimzy. I felt so bad. I was like, I gotta pull the cane because you guys were about to go into it. You were about to launch some deep Muslim deep cuts that I was not going to be able to catch up.
Over everyone's head. They would have been like, "What's going on?" But I was like, I could bring out the big guns for this, but I was thinking, wait, I don't know if this is the time and place for that right now. So
I think that was, both of you had well-reasoned and well-measured responses. And it's just an issue of time thing. We're going so crazy with the time on the show today, but we do have two more callers that I want to get to that are on the line tonight that we could wrap up with. So first, I want to go with Stan, who is in, looks like Pennsylvania. And Stan has a question for Mimzy. Stan, what's up?
Hey. I'm really glad to be on with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
First off, I want just to say to you, Dan, that I appreciate your show.
Oh, thank you.
And I want to say that, I really appreciate you as a person because, I know your whole trajectory, your story, and that I think it shows what intellectually honest person you are, and that you took in new information and you changed your position honestly, and I think that makes you better than a lot of people who have just had deeply held positions their whole life, have never critically examined them. So,
Stan, thank you so much. That really makes my day that you said that.
No problem.
Yeah.
And Mimzy, I'm actually also familiar with you. I'm a subscriber to your YouTube channel. I discovered you actually just a few months ago, really. And so my question was, I'm an atheist, and I'm also a progressive, a liberal. And I want to be an ally to those who are pushing back, I guess, against the excesses of Islam, right? Just the same way that I push back against Christianity, but I want to do it in a non-Islamic phobic way. I feel like it's so easy for people who may have good intentions to try to intercede, but come off as condescending and to not be listening to the community. So I was hoping if you could help me and the audience, find ways that we can assist others like yourself and fight against the fundamentalism and others.
That's an excellent question, Stan. I'm so excited to hear Mimzy's answer.
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question. I'm so sorry.
I think what Stan is trying to say is, he identifies as an atheist, he identifies as a progressive, and he wants to kind of help those in the ex-Muslim community, and he's wondering how he could do that better. Is that a good summation, Stan?
Yes, about being Islamophobic or condescending or something like that.
That's a good question. I've never thought about it from that perspective, but I suppose it's just talking about it. Don't be scared. I think people that don't come from a Muslim background feel like they can't speak about things that seem wrong. I mean, there's a caste system in Hinduism, and I don't come from a Hindu background, but it's definitely something I've spoken about and I continue to speak about, and it's something that I don't agree with, and it's a racist kind of thing within that area. So I feel like don't be afraid to discuss it in whatever format that is. It helps for there to be discussion. And I know it feels quite nerve-wracking, especially because of the way that, oh, sorry, I'm shaking everything. The way that the way that everyone is at the moment. They're kind of scared to say anything against, especially if you're not from a Muslim background. They don't want to insult people or seem racist, but it's not racism. It's an ideology. And if you're kind of criticizing an ideology or an idea because there are elements to it that just are not for this society and are not good for humanity, it's okay to speak about. So I would just encourage people like you to be open in speaking about it. And as I said, whether it's on Twitter or wherever, just wherever you feel comfortable doing that, because I don't think we have enough people, especially now. Like we need as many people, whether you're ex-Muslim or not, to be kind of supporting us. So that's it, really.
Wow.
So I was wondering, maybe we come at this from a different angle, because maybe talk about when you've seen this being done wrong. Because, for instance, we see often that, like, especially people coming from a really disingenuous place, they criticize Islam for, treatment of women. Like, this is a good example, right? They'll say, it forces them to cover up. And for instance, in Sharia law, where women can't testify by themselves, they'll need a man to co-sign their statements. And I feel like it's really disingenuous, especially when you look at the West, and that we slut shame people all the time. We don't believe them when they've been assaulted, as the Me Too movement has shown us. And I think really the difference between the West and the Middle East is just really a difference in degrees in the way we treat women. So, when people criticize on that issue, it's just it sounds really disingenuous. So maybe tell us when you've heard it just being wrong and coming down as condescending. So we know what to avoid.
I mean, I don't think it is condescending. So you're saying because there are perhaps difficulties with equality with women in the West, is that what you're saying? That it's I don't know why that would make a difference to you speaking about both. I think
maybe he's worried. And correct me if I'm wrong, Stan, but kind of a judgment coming from a different culture. You have different value judgments, and when one culture is kind of judging another culture, there can be backlash as far as this is just how we do things, and it's hard for people to kind of make broad statements about those things. Maybe that's a little more clear.
Yeah, it's coming from a really hypocritical place, saying that we're better we're a better society when we do much of the same things ourselves. Of course, we can speak out against both, but I don't know. I'm just looking for ways to be a good ally. I don't know. I don't know. It's vague.
No, I see what you're saying. I don't think you need to put that weight on your shoulders. You're a representative of the West, and you're carrying the burden of everything that they do. And you are just a person, and you just on a human to human level, as I said, I don't think there's much to it. I don't see it that way. You will I hope so. And all of us will just kind of stand up for things that we deem to be kind of not correct, and are oppressing people. And that's it. I don't think it's that complicated, honestly. I mean, as I said, I think there's this fear that's just not necessary. You're absolutely in your right to kind of say, you know what, actually, the fact that women in Iran are forced to wear hijab and are forced to dress in a certain way doesn't seem right. That's not right, and that doesn't take away from what your background is, or it's irrelevant. It's kind of you're just pointing something out, and as I said, it's not like you're going to stop discussing issues in the West. You would discuss everything. It's not like you're just going to be criticizing them and then being like, oh, we're great. But there's, I mean,
If I could add on to that, Mimzy, I think what we see here, and especially I think it's more prevalent in the United States because Muslims are a much smaller minority than maybe where you are in the UK. I think what it is some people are afraid to maybe talk about it because they're already such a small group. And especially in the United States, I mean, statistics show that these people are demonized by the common American. I remember reading Pew Research statistics that say that, it kind of graded people's warmness towards people of other faith. And atheists and Muslims were the lowest, according to Americans, on how warmly people viewed them. And so, there's already a struggle to be a Muslim in the United States. And I think there's some people who feel that, us kind of criticizing Islam is kind of adding fuel to the fire in that sense, that it's not helping people who are already struggling to get by to practice their beliefs freely in the United States, and us doing that, isn't helping their situation.
Wow, see, you're asking the wrong person about this. I strongly disagree with that, and that it kind of it a little aggravates me a bit, just because I feel like it's not about them. And I know it's a strange thing to say, but it's kind of it's so much bigger than that. It's this ideology is literally causing people to die and be tortured. It's so much bigger than that. These people will be like, oh, you're criticizing a book that I believe in. I don't want to say it is personal. I was going to say it's not personal. Obviously, it's their belief, but it's an ideology at the end of the day. I mean, people do it for everything else, and that's why it kind of upsets me, because I feel like there is this difference when it comes to Islam in comparison to everything else. And I don't know why there's this special treatment, because what it does is it just extends this oppression, and these people are just stuck, and then no one wants to speak out. And then it's like Ben Affleck, he kind of was like, oh, this is racist. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but he had a conversation with Sam Harris about, and they were discussing Muslims, and he was saying, criticizing Islam is racism. And that's how it's thought of. I mean, even the word you're saying, that it's kind of insulting these Muslims, it's just not, it's not like that. It's the ideology. We don't agree with it. This ideology is actually causing pain and torture. So we have every right to kind of discuss that. As I said, I would talk about the caste system in Hinduism. I think the more we do it, as well, is it will normalize. I think that's the main problem as well, is because there are smaller communities in America. You don't want to kind of offend people, but the right thing to do isn't to stay quiet about it, I don't think.
Yeah.
Man.
I Go for it, Stan. Tell us what you think about that.
Oh, no, yeah. I just want to say, I definitely agree with you on the importance of speaking out, which is why I'm calling in the first place. And I know what you were referring to with that segment of Ben Affleck and Bill Maher on his show. And that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to replicate that. But you see, that's an interesting point, because Bill Maher in particular and Sam Harris, the way they talk about Islam, I feel like they do it in such broad strokes, right? And they do, and not just Islam. I mean, it comes down to Islamic people, right? Bill Maher in particular, I think he's perfect example of what I'm trying to avoid, actually, because he'll say, well, yeah, Islam, the tenets are this, and we have moderate Muslims in America, but one poll showed that a certain number of people in Egypt, believe in Sharia's law tenets, and so that it's fair for us to stereotype them, basically, right? And that's things I'm trying to avoid. And I want others to avoid. I just want to tackle Islam without attacking the people. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's not about the people. It's just about these ideas that are causing problems like that. And it's not. And we're specific in what we have problems with. If you want to go pray 5 times a day, no one has an issue with that. No one is bothered about kind of what you're doing and living a peaceful life. And the other thing I want to say is as well is we have a lot of moderate Muslims that stand by us. So a lot of people do see that it's not about them. It's not, you'll have moderate Muslims that will be like, actually, I agree that homosexuals shouldn't be dropped from buildings and stoned to death. I agree with that. I agree that apostates shouldn't be killed. I stand by gay rights. I do this. You do get that in the Muslim community, and like you want, that's what they know, that it's not about them. So it isn't about that. And when we have Muslims like that, we kind of stand united, and it's like, great, okay, let's work together. And we definitely have that in America and in the UK.
Man, great conversation. I love what we're talking about here. Stan, thanks for the question. That was really, really awesome. And I hope to hear from you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your show. You're doing a great job, and I hope I hope you're able to call in some other time.
For sure, Stan. Take care. Thanks again. Yeah.
Thanks,
wow.
Stan.
Wow. Great dialogue happening there. I think you're making me more brave in a way, I think.
Yes.
That you're passionate talking about these issues, because the way that I think about this, Mimzy, is I care. I don't talk about Christianity because it gets me going how much I hate Christians or something like that. You know what I mean? I talk about it because I care about the ex-Christians that I know and who have gone through these struggles and who just want to make a place for themselves. Yeah. And not feel like they have to be attacked by their friends and families by what they do or don't believe anymore. And
exactly. My mom is like Muslim. It's never like, do you know what I mean? Like the closest people to me, it wouldn't make sense for me just to be like, oh, I just want to go on a bashing rampage. Like, people use that as an excuse, I feel like, because they don't want to listen to what I'm saying. So they'll be like, oh, this person's insulting us, shut them up. But it's like, then just they don't want to pay attention. But the people that listen and really hear what we're talking about, they're like, yeah, they have a point. So
yeah, for sure. Well, we're running towards the end of the show. We have one more call that I want to get to before we wrap things up. I hope that's okay, Mimzy. I hope you're not too tired on your part of the world there. Calling in from...
I feel like I'm in a dream. When you're kind of in a dream state. Yeah. Like I hope I'm making sense.
You're doing wonderfully. If I had known that you were calling from the other side of the world, I would think that you were just doing just fine. I think you're doing great. I'm sure the people watching would agree. But I do want to get to our last call here. This is Dave from Tucson, Arizona. Dave tried to call in earlier and his call dropped out. And now we're going to try to see if this works again. Dave, are you with us? Oh, man, that's quite an opening there, Dave. I like it.
It's me. It's the one who has the Jehovah's Witness on.
Yes, that's right.
I would like to give an update on that.
Yes, I want to hear an update on your aunt. Let's go. So, for those of you who are just joining us, Dave has been giving us the continuing saga of his relationship with his Jehovah's Witness aunt. Dave was a former Jehovah's Witness, is now not a Jehovah's Witness.
I wasn't a former Jehovah's Witness.
Excuse me, yes. It was but the rest of your family, or parts of your family were, and she's been kind of...
Christianity, yes.
Yes, and she's been messaging you, and the conversations are happening. Anyway, go ahead and give us an update on that.
So... instead of, basically, so you know how most Jehovah's Witnesses just flat out drop out communication, like, with anyone? Like,
yes.
Like, so, I couldn't believe this, but she said, my family and her have finally found a neutral ground. Where, like, we basically came up with a compromise. She said that she would treat Christianity as a whole and Jehovah's Witness as she did when she was Catholic. Like she would still prohibit blasphemy. She still would talk about God, but she doesn't. She just says. I might have to call God a different name now, but I'm still part of the family. I will never leave you guys.
Wow. That's quite a change of pace from the last time you were calling me. That's amazing.
It's amazing. So, good update.
Yes.
Really good update. So another thing I would like to talk about is, have you seen, like, there was a news report recently that San Antonio banned Chick-fil-A from their airport due to a legacy of anti-LGBTQ past, you know?
Yes.
Have you heard of?
I have heard this story. So for those of you who aren't aware, so Chick-fil-A has a history of donating to organizations that have been deemed as kind of anti-LGBT. One of the ways that they're able to do this is they give this money to sort of a separate foundation, and somehow that foundation gives out the donations, and so it kind of avoids some possible legal trouble and stuff that they might have with doing that. But San Antonio has recently said no, they don't want Chick-fil-A because of this stuff, and they have banned this Chick-fil-A in this location.
So because of all of this new happenings, so basically I have an agnostic guy, and she says she hates Chick-fil-A for the same reason. And after I saw this article, I just want to tell my mom and dad, I never want to go back to Chick-fil-A ever again. Either way, there's many places that are a whole lot better than Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Like, you've been to, like, no, it's most people don't know this place, but it's exclusive to the Austin area. P. Terry's.
Yes.
Makes some amazing food.
Yes, we had P. Terry's here in the studio last week. Yeah, for sure.
And Raising Cane's.
Yep, we got
So
those.
far better than Chick-fil-A.
Well, the others are in Texas. Well, you know, like talking about giving up Chick-fil-A though is like asking me to go vegan. It's very hard. You know what I mean? It's like that's a part of my staple diet. You know, but like I had Chick-fil-A last week, and I was thinking like, if some LGBT people knew that I did this, they would not like that I am supporting this people. But it's like
I want to come to America just to try. I don't know any of these places you're just saying, by the way, but like I feel like the food is so much better over there just from watching YouTube videos.
Maybe so. So, okay, whatever you want to say about Chick-fil-A, nobody can say that this. I mean, the chicken sandwiches are good. The discussion isn't about whether or not the food is good. It's more so of like whether or not to support an organization that's also, in hindsight, supporting all these other things. One argument is to say, like, there's so many restaurants and companies out there that are donating stuff anyway to stuff we probably wouldn't have know of, and they're doing it behind our backs anyway, so it's like you're kind of unethically supporting people wherever you go. But there's another argument that says, well, maybe now that we know this, we can avoid this and choose wisely and stuff. I don't know the answer. I think it's a personal preference kind of thing, how much that really means to you, that these organizations are supporting these. I definitely think about it. I'm not going to say that I just eat it and I don't think about it because
I would like now I would like to change the topic. So basically, it's spring break right now, and so basically,
very quickly, Dave. We're almost at the end of the show, so I'm just telling you to wrap it up. But
so I'm in Arizona right now, and a few days ago I was in Sedona, and basically Sedona is basically the hippie capital of Arizona, and it's not hippie unless you slap on some essential oils. There's like an entire essential oil shop just for essential oils. But that's the only thing I found off about Sedona, that there's essential oils. But now I'm in Tucson, and in Tucson there are Kingdom Halls everywhere, and I mean everywhere. And I visited a friend of mine who lives here. And they have the place where they live is, they have the unfortunate place where a Kingdom Hall is right across the road. Mm-hmm. And I see that really, really unfortunate. And I asked them how, before I told them about I asked them about the Kingdom Hall. I asked if what their views on the LGBT community, and they said that they treat everyone with respect. And I reply with, well, I am very sorry that you actually have a Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witness right across from your place. And they responded with, the people from Kingdom Hall always visit their place one way or another, and they're like, oh, come to our church, you'll be saved forever. But they would say, well, I don't really want to. I'm already happy with my church, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. So kind of some battles going on for saving souls, trying to get people to the right religion, it sounds like.
And now, final thing.
Okay, Dave,
So
30 seconds, go.
I have a plan for a silent, what's the word?
20,
Protest.
19,
Why?
18.
Silent protest where I would wear a trans right is humans right in front of any church that is against LGBT, and I would just sit there silently for the next 2 hours or 5. All right, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much for calling, David. Thank you so much for that update. That was interesting, and your calls are always keeping me on my toes, man, because you like to talk about a lot of different stuff, and that's cool. But so, we got we got to wrap things up here, unfortunately. Gosh, what an excellent episode this was today. Mimzy, I'm so glad you got to be on today. This was really, really wonderful. Before we sign off and we kind of talk about where we're going and stuff, I forgot that we actually do have an ad for Atheist Day tomorrow. So really quickly, we're going to play this video for you guys, and check this out. We'll be right back.
Around the world, secular groups are gathering this March to celebrate the first International Atheist Day. While we encourage atheist groups to come together and celebrate, we invite you to join us. Because lacking religion does not constitute hate. Because in many parts of the world, disbelief can have tragic consequences. Because it's time to create an international community. Because where we can be counted, we should. Stand up this March 23rd and join us as we demand to be counted.
Excellent ad. Hello. Yes, mic is still on. You can tell that Eric is really trying for that, National Geographic documentarian thing. I think he's really been practicing that voice specifically for that role. But gosh, let's try to wrap things up here. Mimzy, where can people find your content at?
Yeah, so youtube.com/mimzyvids, which is IMIMZY and then vids with a Z. But I'm also on Twitter, MimzyV. But yeah, everything's pretty much on my YouTube. But it's been so fun. Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. It was really, really great. If this is your first time watching Truth Wanted or listening to Truth Wanted, welcome. I'm Objectively Dan. This is my show. You can find this show on YouTube, so go subscribe there, and also iTunes, Spotify, wherever you download podcasts at. I have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/Truth Wanted that goes to this show. I don't make any money from that Patreon. It all goes to the Atheist Community of Austin, which produces this show and helps fund other shows here as well. So please definitely check that out if you enjoy the content we make here on this show. You can find me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. That's a good way to get in contact with me. Or if you have any other things about the show or you just want to talk to me, you can email me at truth@atheist-community.org. We'll see you again next week, guys, at another episode. It's every week, Fridays at 7 o'clock Central. Be sure to be there. I won't announce next week's guest. Actually, you know what? I will, because it's a pretty big one, guys. Mr. Atheist is going to come on next week. Probably our biggest guest so far in terms of subscribers on YouTube. I'm really excited about that. We've been talking and we've been really looking forward to it. But until then, Mimzy, this was a great episode. I'm so glad you got to be on. And please try to come on again sometime.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Oh my God, I'd love to. And I've got to have you on my channel as well.
Yes,
sure.
we'll make that happen. Well, until then, guys, remember, always keep wanting the truth, and we'll see you next time.